let's cut into this baby. Oh, it looks great. Get up close. There's the crumb on our loaf pan sourdough bread. I'll show you the oven spring by doing a little whoosh. She's happy. There's nothing special in this. It's literally just flour, salt, water, and sourdough starter. That's it. Don't need a Dutch oven, just a loaf pan, a little bit of patience. And this is so easy. It's so easy. The basic steps are mixing your dough, doing your stretch and folds, shaping the dough, letting it rest in the fridge overnight, and then baking it the next day. It's that simple. If you haven't tried making sourdough because you don't have a Dutch oven, or you're intimidated, or you feel like you don't have the right tools or equipment, a loaf pan is an easy solution. And some people actually prefer the shape of loaf pan sourdough versus the more artisan shape that you get when you're using a Banneton. So if you try this, definitely leave a comment. Let me know how it goes. If you have any tips, we would all love to hear them. I'm no perfect sourdough baker. I'm learning every day. Every bake teaches me something. You guys teach me all kinds of stuff. So leave your wisdom in the comments below. I will put all of the details, all the equipment that I used, the recipe, anything, timestamps if you want to jump ahead to different steps in the process. All of that will be in the video description below, so make sure to check that out. And subscribe if you have. I've never said that on my channel, but I think you're supposed to say it. Subscribe if you want to be notified of new videos. I do my very best to post at least one new video every single week. Usually recipe tutorials. Sometimes I'm spitting as much wisdom and education as I have. But anyway, thank you for following along and happy baking. I'm excited about this new audio setup. I feel like a professional. I invested in this much better sound equipment. Fingers crossed this works well, knowing me. Okay, let me grab some water. Today we're gonna make sourdough bread in a loaf pan. I've been getting that request a lot. Whether you don't wanna buy a Banneton or you like having a more regular commercially shaped loaf, loaf pans are a great way to bake your bread. You also don't have to purchase a Dutch oven, which is another huge benefit of baking in loaf pans. Very on brand mom life. Okay, I'm gonna use 300 grams of water. So normally I do 320 to 325 grams of water for a regular sourdough loaf, but I'm using different flour recently. I've been testing out some flour from Italy. The brand is called Caputo. And the version of their flour that I was able to get my hands on from our local restaurant supply is called Americana, and it's 00 flour. So I'm not a flour expert, but I believe it's more finely milled, like it's a finer flour. So it absorbs water a little bit differently than say a King Arthur bread flour. So I've been experimenting with different hydration levels, seeing what this flour can absorb to get the result that I like, which I don't like a more open crumb. I liked it to be a little bit more closed for sandwiches and toppings and all that stuff so they don't fall through. And I found that it doesn't need quite as much water. So I lowered the water slightly from 320 to 300. And that seems to be the sweet spot for this particular flour. So I'm doing 300 grams of water, and I'm gonna do, see if I have enough, 100 grams of starter. Per usual, I didn't plan for this. So I just fed my starter last night just to keep it alive and decided today, you know what? I'm gonna make some bread in a loaf pan. We'll see if I have enough. I never use the right tool for the job, do I? Okay, and also normally I do 120 grams of starter. I'm lowering it to 100 because my starter smells a little bit acidic. When you know that your starter is not at its peak health, it's totally fine to reduce how much you're using in your bread to kind of compensate for that. It's one of the things I learned when reading Open Crumb Mastery by Trevor Wilson. He's got a lot of really great advanced tips in there like this that just help you incrementally get better at making sourdough. And the reason it's a little acidic is because for the past couple of days, I've only been feeding it once a day. Normally I feed twice a day using my preferred feeding ratio, which is 1 to 5 to 5. But lately I just haven't haven't been doing my twice a day feed. So it's erring a little bit on the side of acidic. Plus it's a little bit past its peak, starting to fall a little bit. But anyway, sourdough is not that rigid. Obviously, if I wanted the absolute best result possible, say I was going to be selling my bread to people, I would really want my starter to be a little bit healthier than it is right now, but it's just fine. It's gonna leaven my bread perfectly fine. It may not be 100% perfect, but I'm good with 90, you know? It's all personal preference and how much effort you wanna put into it. Okay, I've got my starter and my water mixed together. Now I'm going to add my flour and salt. 10 grams of salt and 500 grams of this Caputo flour that I keep in this flour bin, which holds 50 pounds of flour. And conveniently, 50-pound bags are what my local restaurant supply sells. And that store is called Cheney Brothers. I have an article on my website about how I buy flour in bulk and different options, because Cheney Brothers isn't available everywhere. I think it's just a Florida thing. But that is the best price I've been able to find for buying flour in bulk, so that's why I purchase it from there. Okay, almost to 500. Oop. Okay. And today I'm not delaying the salt or the starter. If you wanted to do that, you could. An autolyse is when you delay the starter and the salt, and a fermentalise is when you delay just the salt. Both of them have different benefits to them, but they're entirely optional. And sometimes I don't want to do all the steps. And today I don't want to do all the steps. So I'm just mixing everything together at the same time. All right, so I like using a Danish dough whisk here at the very beginning to do like the initial mixing. And then once it gets decently into a dough ball, I'll switch to my hands. The reason I don't use my hands the entire time is because I would be an absolute sticky dough mess, which I will be a little bit anyway, but if you use your hands the whole time, it's another level of sticky dough hands that I'm just not a fan of. I don't like that. I also have been enjoying testing out my new Bosch stand mixer, but I don't want to use that for just one loaf. I feel like that's better suited for two to 5 loaves. I've seen some micro bakers do up to 7 in the Bosch with a little bit of strategy, like doing 1/3 of the flour and then waiting and then adding the rest. Anyway, I don't want to get that thing out and clean it all for just one loaf, so. Now, how much kneading you do up front impacts the strength of your dough. Some bakers swear by doing a lot of upfront initial mixing like this. You can either kind of squeeze it like I am, do more traditional kneading, which is fine, but it's kind of hard to do in this bowl. If I had more of a flat surface, kneading would be easier, but I just kind of am squeezing it. A lot of bakers like to do slap and folds, where you take the dough, slap it down and fold it over, and you just keep doing that. That's a lot easier on your wrists and your forearms. It gets a lot more work done with a lot less effort on your part, which is also fun to do. I just don't want to do it on this countertop placeholder. When we have our quartz countertops, I will definitely do that. But anyway, working the dough a lot up front gives it a good dough strength from the outset, which translates to better bread down the road. It gives your gluten structure more strength for the gas to fill it up. So as the yeast does their thing, they produce carbon dioxide, which makes those bubbles in your dough, but those bubbles need somewhere to go. They go into the gluten network that you've created. So if we can create a strong one up front, you're gonna probably see a taller, loftier, happier loaf in the end. But as with all sourdough steps, there's a trade-off of how much effort and time do you want to put into it for the result that you're going to get. So if you just want to do a very basic mix and just mix everything together until all the dry flour bits are absorbed, that's fine. If you want to spend 10 minutes doing hand mixing to really get the dough strong, you might get a little bit of a better result at the end. So again, experiment, try both ways and see if the outcome difference is worth the extra effort to you. I'm kind of somewhere in between. I spend maybe 3 to 4 minutes doing this initial mixing, and then I'm done, and my arms are tired. It's also why a stand mixer can be useful. It can really get a good window pane at the very beginning, which a window pane is when you take a piece of your dough, get it really thin and stretch it. See how mine is just breaking apart? If it stayed together and you could see light shining through it, that's called a window pane, and it's an indication of very strong dough. So we're not gonna get a window pane right now with 3 to 4 minutes of hand mixing, but if you mixed in a stand mixer for a few minutes, you probably would. Okay, I think I'm good with this. So at this point, I'm just gonna cover this up and let it rest for about 30 minutes. The 30-minute thing is not a rigid time. You can let it go an hour if you want, but somewhere 30 to 60 minutes, somewhere in there, pop over here and do your first round of stretch and folds. And we will do as many sets as it takes for this dough to feel like it is properly strengthened. Usually it's about 4 sets, but it can vary depending on how much you mix the dough up front. You'll need less rounds of stretch and folds. And if the dough seems like it's really not at its ideal strength, you might need to do more, like 5 rounds, but okay. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. See, this is not bad. That's not too much dough. If I hadn't used that Danish dough whisk, I would be a sticky mess. Okay, let me wash my hands. Okay, and I'm just gonna cover this bowl up and I'll be back in 30 minutes to an hour to do our first round of stretch and folds. Right now is also a perfect time to feed your starter. I get a lot of questions about starter maintenance. How often do you feed your starter? When do you do it? When my starter is at peak, I like to use it in a recipe. If I'm not planning on baking, I will discard most of it and feed it, but I basically just discarded it into my dough. I'm using it to bake with, and so the little bit that's left in here is still active starter, and I'm gonna feed it. And starters love this. They love when you keep it going so that they never run out of starches and sugars to consume. It keeps the active population of yeast strong instead of dwindling. So hopefully that made sense. Basically, instead of letting my starter sit on the counter for the rest of the day and not feeding it until tonight, when it would have deflated, it maybe got a little runny, even more acidic, I am feeding it instead. And this will give it some nourishment. A lot of people mix their water in first and then put their flour in. The only reason I don't do that is because I tend to overshoot my water and then I have to put a ton of flour in to get the right texture. I didn't measure anything, I'm just eyeballing this right now. And I don't want to be drowning in starter right now because I have no plans to bake tonight. I'm just feeding this little bit in here to keep my starter alive. Perfect. It's a very thick consistency. Some would say a thick pancake batter. This is a little thicker than I like my pancake batter, but it's very thick. Dairy Queen test, it's not falling out. I like a thicker consistency. It's a little bit more flour than water instead of equal parts, but I find that that helps keep acidity at bay. Okay, I'm gonna go wipe these off with a paper towel. Don't put this stuff down your sink drain because it hardens like concrete and then you might have issues with plumber bills. So I'm gonna wipe these off. I'm gonna set this on my counter. This will do its thing and rise, being happy, and I'll be back for that. All right, it is time for the first round of stretch and folds. It's been about 40 minutes since I mixed this dough. I'm gonna wash my hands but not dry them because doing stretch and folds with wet hands is way easier. Okay, so to do a stretch and fold, you're gonna put your hand underneath a quarter of the dough and really work it and stretch it up without tearing the dough. And then you just lay it back on top of the rest. Quarter turn of the bowl. We're gonna try to get all 4 sides of the dough doing the same stretching motion without tearing and laying the dough back on top. Another quarter turn. And I do this until the dough won't stretch anymore. The number of times that it takes, just depends on your dough. Normally for me it's about 8, but now see it's already about done. Okay, yeah, it's done. It's not willing to stretch anymore. So I just flip it upside down and kind of tuck everything underneath just to get a smooth surface, because it bothers me when it's not, but this is totally not necessary. I just like a smooth surface. So here's what our dough looks like. It's already coming together really nicely. I'm going to let it rest for another 30 to 60 minutes, and I'll come back for our second round of stretch and folds. If you wanted to add any savory inclusions or just anything that won't turn syrupy in the dough, the second set of stretch and folds is a great time to do that. I think I'm just gonna leave this one plain, but that's always an option if you want to get a little fancy with your sourdough. It's been about 35 minutes. It's time for our second round of stretch and folds. I've just washed my hands, so I'm just gonna re-mist them. I love this little water mister. Here we go. And we're just repeating the same thing, stretching it up without tearing, laying it on top. And this is very repetitive. We just do the same thing with 3 or 4 rounds total, this being round 2. Just trying to strengthen our dough and give it some structure so that the carbon dioxide that the yeast is producing has somewhere to go. So it's feeling good. That's it. Covering it up, and I'll be back again for the same old thing in 30 to 60 minutes. All right, I've lost a little bit of track of time. It's been an hour. Starting to see bubbles on the surface. Let me actually show you up close. The fermentation is happening. We're seeing a few bubbles on the surface, a few underneath, but we have a long way to go here. So let's do our third round of stretch and folds. Same old, stretching up as far as it'll go without tearing. Laying it back down. I'm also gonna take the temperature of the dough at this point, just see what we're working with. The temperature can be a really helpful indication about how long things are gonna take. Each recipe and ingredient mix will ferment at a different rate. So you will have to do some experimenting and trial and error in your own kitchen to kind of get a baseline. Okay. All right, this dough is 73 degrees. Our house is 73 degrees, so it's kind of leveled out to the temperature of the environment. 73 degrees usually takes 8 hours. It just depends how much starter you have in the dough, the strength of your starter when you mixed it, how much water you've put in the dough, the type of flour you're using. All of that stuff contributes to how long your dough will take to do a proper bulk fermentation. So I just look for visual signs, and I'll take you through that as this dough continues to ferment so you have an idea of what I look for. But just super word of caution, don't look at the clock or think that just because my dough took a certain amount of time, yours will be the exact same, because it probably won't. I'll be back in 30 to 60 minutes to do the last round of stretch and folds. I think this dough only needs one more round because it's already pretty strong. And then we'll just wait for the bulk fermentation to do its thing. And knowing my luck, it'll probably be done when my kids are making a ruckus tonight, so. Okay, it's been another hour. Just keep losing track of time, but I'm gonna do the last stretch and fold. We've got lots of bubbles all over the surface of the dough at this point. And actually, instead of a stretch and fold, I'm gonna do what's called a coil fold. You pull up from the center and kind of let the other sides just droop down underneath. So this hanging bit is gonna fold underneath. I'm gonna do the same thing in the other direction. So just a gentler on the dough, since there's already bubbles forming throughout the dough. I don't wanna pop them, but I do wanna strengthen the dough a little bit and give it a little more structure. So, okay, that's it. This dough is looking great. Let me show you up close. Here's what it's looking like. Lots of beautiful bubbles. It's very strong. So I'm gonna leave this now on the counter to finish the bulk fermentation. What I'm looking for is jiggly, like jello, bubbles everywhere. When I pull on the side of the bowl, I want the dough to release. I don't want to see tons of gluten strands. They're not necessarily a bad thing, but if your dough is full of gluten strands when you kind of pull at it, it usually means it's probably on the edge of overproofing, if not overproofed. But anyway, we're gonna let this go and get nice and aerated and puffy. So I'll see you in a few hours. Okay, it has been 5 hours since we mixed the dough. So the bulk fermentation has been going on for 5 hours. That timing begins as soon as our starter is added to the dough, because the starter is what is doing the fermenting. So here's what we're looking like. We've got lots of bubbles along the surface. It's getting there, but when I shake the bowl, we're not getting like a big mass of jiggling. We want jiggly like Jell-O. It's jiggling a little, but we need more. We need some more rise to this. Along the sides, we do see lots of bubbles everywhere. It's getting there, but this definitely needs to be pushed even longer. Even the feel of it, when I touch the top, it doesn't feel puffy. We want the dough to feel very puffed up, and it's just not quite there yet. All right, this dough looks ready to shape to me. You see all of the bubbles everywhere. It's still domed. You really want to see that domed shape. If it flattens out, usually that's a sign that it's overproofed, especially if it's really sticky and loose. But this looks good. It's still got lots of structure, and it's jiggly like Jell-O. Kind of hard to show at this angle, but when I jiggle the bowl, the dough's going boo. There's bubbles all around it. See all those beautiful bubbles. The top is tacky, not sticky. And when I touch it, it's got like a bouncy texture to it. Earlier, it felt a little more dense. Now it feels airy when I touch it, like it feels pillowy. That's what we're looking for. The more that you experiment, and like maybe if your dough feels like this, maybe next time you push it another 30 minutes and see how your bread looks. Always experiment and don't be afraid to push things a little bit further. But this dough looks ready to me, and my kids are being quiet. So I'm gonna take this moment to shape this in our lovely loaf pan. Okay, so some bakers like to shape with some bench flour, which is just flour that you put on your work surface to keep the dough from sticking. I tend to prefer a water mister, because the flour sometimes prevents the dough from sticking to itself during shaping, which can be a little frustrating. But because I'm using a loaf pan, I'm thinking about using bench flour. Should get out my little flour duster, but I'm using it for rice flour because I rice flour my bannetons. But don't use rice flour during shaping with your dough, because it will completely prevent your dough from sticking to itself. Rice flour is very good at being non-stick, which is helpful for bannetons, not helpful for shaping. Okay, I'm just kind of coaxing this dough out. Sometimes it falls right out. Today it's sticking a little bit. Oh, this is so pretty. It's so pillowy and okay. So I'm going to shape this for a loaf pan, which is a little bit different than I shape for a banneton. I like to kind of stretch it. Yeah, my hands are a little, it's kind of just a teeny dusting of flour to keep things non-stick. I'm gonna stretch this out in the width of this loaf pan, and then I'm gonna roll it up. And I'm being extremely gentle with this dough. I do not wanna pop any of these beautiful bubbles. That's what's gonna give our dough a lovely airy shape. So light hands here. Okay, now I'm just gonna roll it up, kind of tucking in the sides a little bit as I go. Okay, and I'm gonna use my bench scraper to kind of pull it back towards me, and that's gonna help create some surface tension on the top, which is really helpful for oven spring when we go to bake it later. Okay, you can also use your bench scraper to kind of tuck some of your bench flour underneath your dough, and that'll help make sure it doesn't stick when you go to lift it up and stick it in your loaf pan. Okay, this is a USA Pan bread pan, and it is phenomenal. I am obsessed with USA Pan stuff. I should buy stock in their company at this point. I think I own just about everything they sell. They do not use Teflon. They use a proprietary silicone base to make these non-stick. So I don't have to worry about spraying or flouring, but if you are using like a stainless steel loaf pan or something that's not non-stick, You can spray it with oil, you can flour it really well, or you can buy these little parchment squares that are made to fit bread pans. Those are really handy. Okay, so this is ready to go. I'm just gonna lift it up and plop it in my loaf pan, seam side down, because we're not turning this out like we would with a Banneton. We're gonna bake it just from here. And look at how beautiful and bubbly this dough is. Stunning. Makes me happy, nice and jiggly. Okay, so that's it. I'm gonna cover this up and put it in the fridge overnight. If you don't wanna do a cold proof, you can cover it and leave it in a warm place. And once it's risen more and is super jiggly, stick it in the oven and you can bake it. That's called an ambient proof. Research yet, but there's a lot of personal anecdotes and a lot of evidence, I would say, pointing towards a cold proof being better on your gut. And it gives more tangy flavor. I love tangy sourdough. So I'm a fan of letting this hang out in the fridge overnight and baking the next day, but you do have both options. If you don't wanna wait, I could just cover this up, leave it for 2, 3, 4 hours, just depends a little bit, till it's nice and jiggly and puffy, and bake it. I'm gonna go stick it in the fridge, and I will be back with you tomorrow to bake this beautiful loaf pan sourdough. Hello, it's day 2. Look at this beautiful loaf pan of dough. She's ready to be baked. Just wanted to show you up close. Stunning. My kitchen, this is a lived-in house. This isn't like some studio. So yes, my sink is full of dishes. I've got dishes to put away. It is what it is. Sorry about it. Okay, this is optional, but I kind of see it as like a little bit of insurance to make sure that your loaf has plenty of steam. I just take my little water mister. I'll put the link in the description. It's one of the most popular items in my Amazon storefront because of how cheap it is and how handy it is for so many things. So I'm just gonna mist the top of the loaf. That'll make sure there's plenty of steam, and I'm gonna set this one right on top. Now this is called the 2 loaf pan method. Maria from Leaf and Loaf Co. popularized this, if not even came up with it. I'm not sure. I don't know anymore. I need a spreadsheet of who came up with what to make sure I credit everyone properly. But I learned about this through Maria. She has lots of education on her Instagram about it, especially for home micro bakers, to get the most out of the real estate space in your oven without having to pay for a really big commercial oven. But this is also useful just for those of us who don't want to use a Dutch oven. It's nice. I would also encourage you to check out Jocelyn. Her Instagram is A Friend in Need. She did a side-by-side of using the 2 loaf pan method and then also using it without the top loaf. And she actually preferred it without the top loaf in her particular oven. She has a gas oven. So try both and see what method you like the best. I have 2 loaf pans, so in my view, why not use both of them? If I didn't need it, that's fine. Maybe in the future I'll do a side-by-side in my own oven. Every oven is different. But for today, I'll keep that on there. And I'm gonna bake it at 450 degrees, not convection. Convection will have the fans blowing around. And this isn't like a super tight seal, so I don't wanna add any more movement of windy air in there. So it's just on bake, and it's going in for 25 minutes. So 25 minutes total. Hold this now. But I'm gonna wait like 8 minutes or so, and at the 8-minute mark, I'm gonna come in and score the top of my bread, replace the lid, and let it finish for the rest of the 25 minutes. After that, I'm gonna take the lid off and keep it off for 10 to 15 minutes or until the loaf gets nice and golden brown. This is called, I don't know, I just call it like what is it called? Everyone does this different minute. Like some ovens work best at like 7 minutes, some best 8 minutes, some 9. It's just a delayed score. And what it does is it ensures that your loaf kind of sets up a little bit in the oven before you score it. I could have scored it just now, but I feel like, and my mom feels like this too, that when you're using the loaf pan method, the delayed score somehow seems to work a little bit better than scoring it first. You can do either way. Don't come at me if you do it a different way and it works just fine. There are many ways to do sourdough. It's very flexible, but it's worth trying if you haven't before. I enjoy it. So I will be back to score this in just a few minutes. It's time to take out our loaf pan and give it a score. It's been 8 minutes. puffing up. Just gonna do straight down the center. Oh, it didn't sit up all the way. Okay, that's all right. Just try to be. So I should have gone longer than 8 minutes, probably because of the water I sprayed on there. It's okay. Okay, good enough. Putting the lid back on and letting it finish its 25 minutes. Okay, the loaf pan timer just went off, so let's take the lid off and we'll let it finish its bake. That's what she's looking like. Okay, I'm glad it's looking good. It's kind of nerve-wracking when you spend so much time filming something and something flops, so thank God this looks beautiful. I'm gonna put it back in uncovered at this point until it's nice and golden brown, and the internal temperature is 205 to 210 degrees Fahrenheit or 96 to 99 degrees Celsius. About 10 to 15 minutes. And I keep the temperature at 450, but if you're feeling like when you take the lid off, it's already starting to brown and you're worried about burning or just getting too dark, you can lower the oven temperature by like 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So 450 to 425. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head what that is in Celsius, but every oven is different. So what works for me and what my result is might vary a little bit based on your oven. She's ready. Are you ready? Loaf pan. Okay, so that was 10 minutes. I like it to be a little more brown, so I'm gonna go like another 5, and then I'll check back in. I'm also gonna rotate it. All right, 5 minutes. Okay, I'm back. I don't even know how long that was. It was definitely longer than 5 minutes. Might have been 10, I don't know. Perfect, she's golden. The reason for the random splotches, I believe those were bubbles in the dough. You know, just air pockets. So that's why they kind of baked a little bit differently, but who cares? Not a big deal. This is a beautiful loaf of bread. I'm gonna let this cool in the pan for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll turn it out onto a cooling rack. One of the reasons I love these USA pans so much is this. They're so good, and you get amazing browning on the sides. These pans, stunning. Now I'm just gonna keep this on a cooling rack. Oh, it's so light and, well, the bottom isn't as crunchy and hard as an artisan loaf baked in a Dutch oven, but it's kind of nice. You know, it's got a softer crust. Okay, I'm gonna let it cool a little bit. I'm gonna resist the urge to just cut into it because the steam in there is still doing a little bit of baking. It's kind of like when you cook a steak and you let it rest for 10, 15, 20 minutes before you cut into it so the juices can kind of like reabsorb. Similar concept for sourdough bread. The steam in there is still doing a little bit of baking in the bread as it's cooling down. So if I were to cut it open right now while it's still steaming hot in there, that steam would escape, and as the loaf cools down, you're gonna notice that your bread is a lot drier, which is no problem if you're planning to eat it all right away. Like last night, I made grilled cheese with a fresh loaf of sourdough bread, cut into it piping hot, but immediately made grilled cheese with almost the entire loaf, and it was fine, no problem. This is all that's left of that loaf. Is really dry now because a lot of that steam escaped, and it just kind of has like a stale feeling, even though I literally baked this less than 24 hours ago. Oh, it smells like jalapenos because there's cheddar jalapeno in this dish. Anyway, not the end of the world. Feel free to break the rules. Who cares really? But if you want your bread to be really nice and to last well for a few days, let it cool down first. Let's cut into this baby. There's the crumb on our loaf pan sourdough bread. I'll show you the oven spring by doing a little, she's happy.